If you guys are from Texas, the brand is iconic. If you guys are not from Texas, watch out. They're coming towards you, and it's a phenomenal brand. I was born and raised in the Midwest. I knew nothing about it, and I moved here in eighth grade in the '80s. Uh, and I remember our mover talking to my dad. He's like, "You guys need to go get barbecue and Whataburger." And like we thought it was almost like, well, what is Whataburger? We haven't heard of this category, but it was like the brand Whataburger and then just the category of barbecue. Um, but we've had the privilege of working with Water Brands and the Whataburger family for a few years now. Just to kind of give you some statistics, they've got over 1,000 locations. But from a co-branding perspective, and you're starting to see a lot of people co-brand inside of fuel and convenience. They have, on the franchise side, about 13% of their franchisees right now are co-branded. In totality of the 1,040, they've got about 3%. So it's definitely an area when you're growing as quickly as they are, and especially you're going to hear some things as to like what could cause growth to slow, whether it's interest rates, cost of construction. You have to get pretty creative. So I'll let them kind of also give a little bit more description of who they are. As long as Scott doesn't talk about when we were in our 20s in the GIS world, we're okay. But Joe, from a Whataburger perspective, are you guys growing? If so, why, where, and how?
Well, thank you, Charles. Again, Joe Jaynes, Group Director, Corporate Real Estate. A little bit about myself. I've been here about 5.5 years with the brand, going through an explosive growth period right now. Over the past 5 years, we've seen a family company that had about 750 units decide that it really wanted to ramp up their growth. As a lot of you know, with family-run businesses, at some point they get to a scale where it's very difficult for the family to scale it. So the Dobson family brought on an investment firm to help scale the company. Since then, in 5 years, we've grown over 250 locations. So it's very, very explosive growth with no plans to really end anytime soon, only accelerate on that growth. We are growing anywhere from Arizona all the way over to the Carolinas. So I'll hit on each of those just a little bit. Phoenix, Tucson, very, very important areas of development for us right now. Here in the core in Texas, we're never going to forget where we came from, where our roots are. It is, as Charles said, it's an iconic brand here in Texas. We are continuing to chase market share here in Texas. A big emphasis on growth right now for us is in the Southeast. We've planted the flag in Atlanta, using that to launch into the Carolinas right now. Over the next several years, we'll have several locations, several hundred locations throughout the Carolinas. So Atlanta was, again, our plant the flag location and launching us out of the southeastern part of the United States. So as for how we're growing, it's a mix of corporate and franchise. The company's about 80% corporately owned, will remain so. We've employed a lot of new franchise partners to help us grow in different parts of the world. So if I would break it down very simply for you, you'll see a lot of corporate growth in the larger markets, and a lot of the smaller infill markets will use franchise partners to help along with that growth period.
What's from an outlook perspective within the fuel and convenience channel? What's your outlook as a company, and specifically maybe like what's your outlook of the category as it relates to that?
So for us, we look at, when we're doing anything site related, any site selection related, we're always looking for daily drivers, any business driver. That's a wide variety. It can be a grocery store, it can be a hospital. Convenience stores are fantastic in our book. That's a daily driver. People are, I'm preaching to the choir here. You guys know how many people stop on a daily basis at a convenience store for gas, for products. So that's a daily driver that we like to be next to, if not inside, and do what we call a co-brand location. So,
Scott, what do you do to understand the performance of a good Whataburger location?
A lot of what we do is try to figure out, where are the customers, where are they coming from, what are, like Joe mentioned, what are the drivers, where do people go when they leave their homes? Is it one stop, two stops, multiple stops, on their way to work, on their way home? There's a lot of information out there, just trying to, especially with mass mobile data, just trying to figure out, how do people move? Where are areas growing? Where's the population increasing, both apartments as well as homes? Where are businesses expanding also? And really just trying to stay relevant with where the people are or and where they're going to be.
And so you hit on it a little bit, but like, talk to us a little bit about how you guys, and specifically you and your team, focus on the customer behavior of a Whataburger customer. What do you do, and how do you look at that?
We look through that at a variety of lenses. There's demographics, there's psychographics, we have cross-shopping, just trying to learn more about people and their ages and the median age. You know, family presence is a big driver for our sales. More people in a household, usually the higher ticket average we have, and you know, it's more profitable for us if we're in a family type setting. But there's an awful lot. I mean, drive distance, number of competitors in a certain area. There's a lot of information we look at, just trying to make a good quality choice, since it's going to be a 20-plus year investment.
And when we did a dry run and sort of kind of walk through some of the things that we wanted to talk about, it was actually before the kickoff of college football, and Scott was really going to have a really positive University of Florida stance. But he's had to recreate his posture, so his introduction was a little bit lighter. But Scott is a GIS ninja. He is in the world of spatial analytics. There's a lot of people that play in that category, but it's really hard to leverage mobility data, demographics, and psychographics, and use it in tools that can actually turn in answers. Everyone has access to data. You know, everyone talks about mobility data, but like, the reality is data is just a data, right? And so like, he and his team are able to really help find the signal and the noise, which helps Joe on his team. So, you know, Joe, kind of to go back to you, if we talk about a co-branded unit versus a freestanding unit, what, outside of the obvious, what's different about the two?
You know, we get asked that a lot, is what's really different. So obviously the outside's a little bit different because it's attached to another building, a convenience store, if you will. But on the inside, it's no different. We're utilizing the same square footage. It's the same dining room. It's the same kitchen. Everything is the same. Even our double drive-throughs, we like to have a double drive-through to help move customers through quicker. But the basics of every part of that is it's the kitchen. It's the same size kitchen we'll employ in any freestanding unit out there. So we can get the same AUVs out of a co-brand location, pump as much traffic through, you know, at peak periods as we would in any freestanding location. So what would appear to be different and maybe look a little different on the outside looking in is exactly the same engine that fuels it.
What the benefits of a customer with a co-brand location? We talked a little bit about it beforehand, you know, but multiple stops, the frequency. Is there anything else, or do you want to elaborate on any of those a little bit deeper?
Well, from our seat, we're seeing a very similar customer base. I mean, it's a convenience play. It's a one-stop. You get all the shopping. From what we see, we're starting to employ online ordering. So we've employed the app since COVID, which has been a big boost to our business. That's 10% growing to 15% very rapidly. We'll see people that'll stand outside, they'll be getting gas, they'll order on the app, walk inside while they're still getting gas at the pump, come back out. So it's a very much of a convenience play for our customers. So it's one-stop shopping, if you will.
Scott, how do you look at competition and co-tenancy in general as it relates to Whataburger?
So it's good for customers to have options. If you pull up to an intersection and there's 2 or 3 different QSRs, that's potentially more attractive than just having one choice. Because if you're not in the mood for that one product, you know, then you're going to move to the next intersection. So having competition is actually a good thing, to where it gives customers options and choices. It's good to be first to market also, knowing also what else is planned. So having a good real estate broker who's familiar with that intersection and knows what else is going on down the road is also helpful to make a good decision. You know, having a competition's not always a bad thing too. Having a draw, multiple competitors actually is enticing. So having too much competition is negative, but some competition is good. We look a lot at like population density as well as to competitors. So, you know, that's one aspect we look at in addition to, you know, average family household size. So really just trying to look at that type of information is, that's critical for us depending on what kind of setting it is, whether or not it's more downtown like this, as well as a suburban or perhaps even a more rural or an interstate location.
So we're all going to leave here in a little bit, and we're all going to probably go back to an airport, whether it's Love Field or Dallas Fort Worth, and we're going to pass a bunch of fuel and convenience stores, some of which are co-branded, some of which have their own fuel, or some of them have their own food categories. Do you look at convenience food competition any differently than you would look at freestanding food competition?
It really depends. I mean, it's great to be in a grocery store or a gas station or on that kind of out parcel, just because you can stop one time and get gas as well as food. So it's very convenient to save time and money and effort. So it's definitely an attractive aspect.
Okay, and so before your loyalty app, which obviously not all of your customers use, talk to us about some of the tools and what you do to understand the customer profile of the guest at a Whataburger.
There's a few different ways we can look at that. A lot of it is, what you can use a drive time ring. Actually, kind of starting back at the beginning, people use radius rings, looking at 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile. Then we've, improved. Actually, the data's gotten a lot better to where now you can actually do a drive time ring where you can look at 5 mile or 5 minutes or 7 minutes or 10 minutes based on what your brand is. Now there's also even like more information with cell phone data and being able to look at that information and figure out who is moving, how frequently, where do they stop before and after a Whataburger. There's a variety of different data you can look at in order to try to figure out your most likely customers before you make that type of investment.
So Joe, kind of on that customer profile, when you're looking at co-branded facilities, my working assumption is that profile is probably important regardless of whether it's a freestanding aspect or a co-branded facility. Fair?
No, very fair, yes. We look at it, it's the brand Whataburger appeals to a lot of different customers. It will go high and go low, not too high, not too low, but there's a massive appeal right in the middle. And then based on those locations within certain trade areas, we find that we can hit different demographics at different day parts. So it's the brand itself has a very wide appeal, as does a lot of the convenience stores, depending on the demographic you're trying to serve.
So last question, and maybe a little bit more futuristic, but we've all kind of are starting to kind of start working in the world of electronic vehicles and what that means to our concepts. What are you guys contemplating as it relates to EV landscape and your parking lots and that nature?
So it's one of those things that historically we've kind of taken a wait and see approach to it to see what we're never going to be on the cutting edge with this brand. We're going to kind of take a more patient, tried and true approach. Over the past couple of years, we've been more accepting of EV chargers. Let's put some of those on our locations, see what kind of revenue it generates. We get approached a lot by the EV car makers wanting to put their product there. We're testing a few of those locations right now. What we're seeing, this is just very, very early data, is we're getting a longer dwell time. So we are getting people who come into the restaurants and spend more time while their cars are recharging. So early indication is it's very positive. Results remain to be seen, but I think we're seeing a definite trend turn into more of it's here to stay.
So we have a few more minutes. I know there's probably going to be questions, and there's the questions for them. So anybody have a question that you want to start off with? And they're just going to walk up a microphone to you if you just give it a couple seconds.
Thank you. Scott, I think you mentioned that data is available that indicates whether or where someone is going either before or after a Whataburger. And I was just wondering if you have a sense of if, like, your trip to a Whataburger tends to be a destination where someone walks out of their door, goes right to Whataburger, or if it's more like they're doing a bunch of things and then they work that into their trip. I'm sure it's both, but do you have a sense of what's more dominant?
We're definitely not a destination, even though we think we are. And honestly, I mean, it's usually somebody is, that's not the only reason they left their house at that or their place of employment for that time. We'd like to think it is, but we know it's really not. But really, it's really just on the way to the grocery store, on the way before or after a gas station, whether or not you're visiting Walmart or Target. Those are the most likely places where people travel along their travel route while also stopping for a meal.
Yeah, it's definitely a convenience play. So we found you've got to have visibility, you've got to have access, and you've got to be convenient to your customers.
One of my kids would call it a destination. I just need if I can't find them, I just drive near Love Field and look inside the windows. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. So you had mentioned the early stages of testing certain stores with EVs. So with what you're finding in terms of people staying longer, are there any accommodations or things that you're doing to accommodate for those that are staying longer?
Nothing really in particular at this point. Again, we're just in the early stages of it. I will share this with you from an end user perspective. We are seeing the longer dwell times. We're seeing you're seeing people who are more on their phones. They're more likely to use the app. And with that, we're seeing higher AUVs, higher check averages. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of a symbiotic relationship there. So.
Hey guys, that was really interesting. Thank you very much. It's probably mainly for Scott. This question, Scott, you were talking about the different kind of data sets and information sources that you have with the co-branded locations. Are you anecdotally trying to figure out whether people also pump gas, charge, go into the co-located convenience store during the same trip, or have you kind of started to bring together data points that allow you to kind of quantify whether people use those different facilities in the same trip?
It's hard to pin down the exact, whether or not they pull into a gas station with a Whataburger and fuel up and get Whataburger or vice versa. But it's usually along their travel path in very close proximity to visiting a Whataburger.
I will say, and some of the things that we've done with them and others, that's where I think data almost can kind of become paralyzing a little bit. You can geofence drive-throughs, you can geofence the park and waits, you can geofence the restaurants. So you can create a bunch of nested geofences and theoretically query the data. And so there's definitely positives and negatives in doing that, but I think as it becomes more and more prevalent, where a co-brand becomes more of, not that it's been an afterthought, but as it becomes more and more front-footed, that's really usually when people are wanting to ask those questions. Hey, why is that co-branded facility doing so much better than that? And that typically is when Scott and team will then say, okay, well, here's how we can potentially unpack that and solve that. I think that was it. Did anyone eat a Whataburger this week? This week, yeah. There's 2 on the way back to the airport, and there's a couple at the airports. Well, good. Well, I think that's it. Thank you guys very much for your time. I appreciate it. If you have any questions afterwards, feel free to flag us down.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.